a real tendency in Britain to believe that racism, and especially anti-black racism that originates from a history of slavery and colonialism, is an American problem. We often sit in complacency and talk about how terrible things are in America. The irony is this was a form of racism and ideology that was invented here in Britain. And for black British people, we have been living at ground zero of this ideology without any recognition of the ways in which it has shaped our lived experience. It's really fascinating how statues spontaneously became centres for protest during this movement, because no one was really asking for them to be taken down as a specific response to the murder of George Floyd. But for so many of us, they represent all of the unsaid and erased parts of our history. The reality is that we glorify people who were personally and institutionally complicit, even enthusiastic about the murder, the genocide, the appropriation of land and the enslavement of black people. Many of the figures that we elevate on statues were involved in military expeditions, people like Admiral Nelson, who's remembered for defeating the French in an incredibly important war for the British. But what's not remembered is that he personally supported the slave trade. He used his political privilege to advocate against the abolition of the slave trade. Winston Churchill, rightly remembered for his role in enabling the Allies to win the Second World War. But it's not mutually exclusive to acknowledge that and remember that he also was obsessed with racist ideas about Africans, about Indians, so much so that even his conservative, Eton-educated cabinet colleagues were concerned that his racism was clouding his judgment. Until we can look at these statues in an honest way and have a conversation, which has not been happening, I don't think it's acceptable to leave them in these positions where they're glorified in public spaces and all the messages that sends to British people about what we stand for as a nation.
Enough is enough. This is the Civil Rights Movement 2020. Black Lives Matter.
People in the UK are living the everyday legacy of the system of racism that was created. Many black people in Britain are the descendants of immigrants who were specifically brought to this country to do low-wage labour, to live in substandard housing, for their children to receive an inferior education, and we still see the results of that. Black children are so much more likely to be excluded from school. Black people are more likely to live in inadequate housing in impoverished areas. Black people are more likely to work on unfair labour terms. This is a moment where it's time to really hone in on the black experience and to stop tiptoeing around it as this society has always done.
Afua Hirsch, returning now to CNN's exclusive polling that shows major racial divides in the UK, including when it comes to Britain's political parties. Black people are significantly more likely to say the country's Conservative Party is institutionally racist, although a sizable minority of white people agree. You see it there, 39%. A Conservative Party spokesperson says, quote, "We're proud to be a party that champions and supports opportunity for all, of all races, religions, and backgrounds." So that's the response from the Conservative Party. Prejudice and discrimination have no place in the Conservative Party, and we will